Good morning. Hope everybody's having a great morning. I'm having a great morning. We're going to learn today the vulnerability trap, why being open keeps you isolated in any type of relationships that you are building. And we're going to learn why radical openness without boundaries backfires and how to practice vulnerability in a way that actually deepens connection instead of pushing people away. Okay. You've probably heard that vulnerability is the key to real intimacy. So you open up. You share your fears, your past, your deepest insecurities with someone you thought was safe. And somehow it made things worse. You felt more alone, not less, more exposed, not more connected. So today we're talking about the vulnerability trap and why being open isn't the same as being truly seen. All right, stay with me because the difference is going to change how you show up in every situation, every relationship you have. All right, you are really open to grow, but you just feel stuck. And the vulnerability trap isn't what you think it is. Here's what nobody tells you about vulnerability. Being vulnerable and being reckless with your openness are two completely different things. And I see this all the time with people who come to me saying, I've done everything right. Everything right. I've been honest. I've been open. I've told them everything about me. So why do I still feel unseen? The answer is usually this. They've confused vulnerability, which is courage plus discernment, with emotional dumping, which is just fear looking for a place to land. And when you dump your emotional world onto someone without any boundaries, without any sense of timing, without any awareness of whether they're actually capable of holding space for you, you're not being vulnerable, you're being defensive. You're trying to get ahead of rejection by rejecting yourself first. You're saying, here's everything broken about me. So you can't use it against me later. That's not intimacy. That's self-sabotage dressed up as openness. So as you continue to grow, I've learned that real vulnerability has a structure to it. It's a strategy. It's a strategy that moves forward. It's rooted in trust, not just in hope. And when you practice real vulnerability, you're not oversharing with someone just because they asked or because, you need relief. You're carefully, thoughtfully revealing parts of yourself to someone who has already shown you they can be trusted with those parts. You're testing the waters. You're paying attention to how they respond. You're noticing when they lean in or pull away, whether they honor what you shared or weaponize it later, whether they, reciprocate it or take without giving back. The vulnerability traps, it happens when you skip all of that. When you go from 0 to 100 because you're lonely or because you think that's what authentic looks like, authenticity looks like, or something that just ain't that's that's supposed to be real but ain't real. That's what you think it look like. You tell someone you've known for 3 weeks about your abandonment wounds, and then you share your financial insecurity with someone who hasn't proven they're trustworthy with you. You reveal your deepest shame to someone who's shown you time and time again that they can't hold it with care. And then you wonder why you feel more isolated, not less. You wonder why the connection didn't deepen. It's because you didn't build a foundation first. You just swung open a door that had no lock on it. Why we fall into the vulnerability trap? Let's figure that out. Let me name something real. A lot of us were taught that being guarded is bad. We were told that vulnerability means saying yes to every question, answering every probe, letting people in without conditions. We grew up in, families where boundaries were called coldness, where saying no was called selfish, where keeping anything private was called dishonest. So now, as adults, we've internalized that. We internalize this belief that real authenticity means total transparency, and that's costing us. When you believe that authenticity equals telling everyone everything, you end up in the one of two places that you kind of are misunderstood. Either you become exhausted or resentful because you're constantly overgiving, constantly exposing yourself, constantly trying to prove your realness to people who haven't earned the right to see it, or you swing the other way. You shut down completely. You build walls so high that nobody can touch you. And then you feel the loneliness of being completely alone inside your own fortress. The vulnerability trap also gets triggered by something else that I see constantly. You're in a transition, you're coming out of a breakup, or you're leaving a job, or you're questioning who you've been for years. And in that space of uncertainty, you want to speed up the process of being known. You want to jump to intimacy without earning it. Guess what? You think if you just tell someone enough about yourself, they'll understand you. They'll see you, they'll stick around. But that's not how trust actually builds. Trust builds through small, consistent, reciprocal exchanges over time. It builds when you say a little bit of something true and the other person honors it and depends and really respond in kindness. Then you go a little deeper. Then they go a little deeper. It's a dance, not a confession booth. All right. The real cost of vulnerability, I want you to learn to feel cost of this. I want you to feel the real cost of this for a second. When you're stuck in vulnerability, when you're stuck in the vulnerability trap, you're not getting what you actually want. You're not getting seen. You're not getting held. You're not getting the kind of intimacy that changes you. What you're getting instead is rejection or worse, pity. You're getting people who feel burdened by you. You're getting relationships that feel one sided because you've given everything and they giving back crumbs. You're getting your own shame weaponized against you because you gave it away too soon to someone who wasn't safe. And here's the deeper cost. Every time you do this, you're training yourself to believe that you're too much, that your pain is too heavy, that the real you is too broken for anyone to actually love. So you keep doing it, waiting for the one person who will absorb all of you without flinching. And that person doesn't exist. Nobody can do that. Not because of them, because of the structure of human connection. We don't fall in love with someone's damage. We fall in love with someone's wholeness, which includes their wounds, but isn't defined by them. The vulnerability trap also costs you time. Time you could be spending building real grounded relationships with people who actually show up for you. Instead, you're exhausted from managing the relationships you've created with people who aren't equipped to be in them. You're spending energy trying to convince someone to care about you then and when they've already shown you through their actions that they don't. You're stuck in the gap between who you are and who you're trying to be for someone else. And that gap is where your life gets smaller, not bigger. Okay. So the difference between real vulnerability and the trap. So, what does real vulnerability actually look like? It looks like discernment. It looks like you knowing the difference between someone who deserves access to your inner world and someone who doesn't. Real vulnerability is you saying, I'm going to share something true about myself right now. And I'm doing it because I notice that you've shown up for me before, because you've kept my secrets, because when I told you something hard, you didn't use it against me or tell other, or you didn't tell other people. I'm trusting you with this because you've given me reason to trust you. Real vulnerability also has a built-in feedback mechanism. You share something, you pay attention. Does this person lean in and ask questions, or do they share something back? Do they hold space for you without trying to fix you or minimizing what you said? Or do they change the subject? Mm. Do they look uncomfortable? Do they use what you've shared as gossip later? Those responses tell you everything you need to know about whether you should go deeper with them or whether you need to protect yourself. And here's a concrete example. Let's say you're dating someone new and they ask you about your last relationship and vulnerability and the vulnerability trap. And you would tell them everything. You've explained the patterns you fell into, the things you regret, the ways you weren't who you wanted to be. You dumped the whole story because you wanted them to know the real you and you wanted to avoid surprises later. Mm. But real vulnerability would look different. You would answer the question honestly, but with discernment. You might say something like, my last relationship taught me a lot about how I show up when I'm afraid of abandonment. I've been working on that in therapy and I'm much more aware of it now. I'm also still learning what I actually wanted instead of just what I think I should want. That's honesty. That's real. But it also protected you. Okay. You told the truth without dumping everything. You reveal something real without giving away your power. And then you notice what they do with that. Do they ask follow up questions? Do they share something vulnerable back? Or do they make it about them? That tells you if you should go deeper next time. So, real vulnerability is also paced. It's not all at once. It's not every feeling that comes up in the moment. It's strategy. It's strategized for great reasons. It's timed. It's based on what the other person has already shown you about their capacity to hold space. And that's not manipulation. That's wisdom. That's you respecting both yourself and the other person by not overwhelming them with more than they're ready for. Okay. So check this out. You know, this is real. You got to practice this stuff. And so I be looking for people to role play with me. I be looking for people to have these conversations with me. I be looking for people to really get into that place and space that are really ready to work on, themselves. But not only that, helping people focus and stay in, intentional alignment with thriving to help other people grow in their places and spaces, because that's what it's about. So, this is what you actually do first. First, you get clear on your own inner world before you share it with anyone else. And basically, I just share it with that's what I'm looking for. So, if this is what I'm looking for, this is how I hopefully will play it on out. But you never know who is not ready. So you have to prepare people to become ready. And this is foundational. Before you tell someone your fear of abandonment, you need to understand it yourself first. You need to know where it came from, how it shows up in your body and what triggers it, what you need when it's activated. When you skip this step and just dump it on someone else, you're asking them to do your emotional work for you. That's not vulnerability. That's emotional labor you're pushing onto them. All right. Second, you build in a waiting period. I know that sounds cold, but it's actually the opposite. When you feel the urge to tell someone something deep about yourself, Y'all saw it. Y'all saw that deep breath. Pause. Ask yourself, have I shared anything vulnerable with this person before? How did they respond? Do I feel safe with them? Have they shown me consistency over time? Hmm. If you can't say yes to all of those, wait. There's no rush. Real intimacy is built slowly. The waiting period isn't about playing games. It's about letting trust develop naturally instead of forcing it. Okay. Third, you practice it over and over and over. Pay attention to whether the other person is meeting you halfway. Are they sharing things about themselves? Are they asking you questions that show you curiosity or showing you that they're curious about your inner world? Are they following up on things you shared before, or do they seem to forget? If you're the only one being vulnerable, that's information right there. That tells you something about the relationship and what it's actually capable of being. Number four, you use what I call the micro vulnerability approach. Instead of sharing your whole story at once, you share small pieces. You test the waters. You notice how someone responds. Okay. And based on that response, you decide whether to go deeper. This is especially important. This right here is so important, right? No, this is especially important in new relationships or with people you're still building trust with. You might say, I had a hard week, and notice if they ask, well, what happened? Or if they just move on. That tells you something right there. You're not being withholding, you're being wise. And here's the thing that changes everything. You start to separate your realness from your damage. Okay. You start separating that. Your authenticity isn't built on your pain. Your wholeness isn't defined by your wounds. You can be completely authentic and still maintain boundaries. You can be honest and still selective about who you're honest with. Those two things aren't in conflict. They're actually the same thing. So there's steps to this. And as you grow as a person, let me tell you something. When you grow as a person, guess what? When you get out your vulnerability trap and start practicing real vulnerability, everything shifts. So be sure to continue to follow.